Did I just describe a likely scenario? When you come back next week with your colleagues, will you have a new bill to vote on for DHS?
Well, I surely hope so. I think nobody really wants to shut down, but we cannot continue with the bill that was sent over to the Senate from the House. So I hope that the Senate Republicans and the president works with Senator Schumer so that we have a new bill. Well, number one, that the DHS funding is out of the other 6 bills, of which we had basically some bipartisan agreements, so that we can make sure that there are changes in the DH bill. What you said is right. We want to end roving patrols and have some enforce and accountability. We want to make sure that there's an increased transparency. We get rid of no judicial warrants, no mask. We can't wear masks. So I think that if that kind of dialogue and conversation is taking place, and I hope that Senator Thune works with Senator Schumer to pass a bill with those kinds of things in them, then we will be able to vote on a new bill when we get back on Monday.
I guess the question is, will it pass the House? Because you know well that there are some strong objections in the Freedom Caucus and in other quarters of the Republican conference. But Congressman Meeks, today we saw Ron Johnson, Tommy Tuberville, Mike Lee, Ted Budd, and Rand Paul all vote against the bill that was brought to the floor, this procedural vote. What does that tell you about a likely passage in the House?
Well, I think that it should pass. All we really need in the House is 3 to 4 Republicans to vote with us. And if they see that some of the Republican senators, will stand and do the right thing, that should give them the coverage to do the same thing also. Look, the situation as we see with reference to ICE is completely out of control. Accountability is not an option. It's a requirement. And Congress has that requirement of making sure that we are holding individuals accountable. And so I think that's what is at stake. That's not even a Democrat or a Republican issue. It is basically standing for doing the right thing when we see American citizens being gunned down in the streets by ICE agents.
We talked with Robin Kelly a couple of days ago, Congressman, who has drafted articles of impeachment for Kristi Noem that I believe you have co-sponsored, you have signed on to. Where does that effort stand? And is her removal one of your demands for a deal?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's critical. You see an individual who is not ready, she's never been ready for the job that she has. When you make the kind of statements that she made immediately after both the shootings of Renee Good as well as Alex Preddy, without any evidence, other than what your actual eyes have seen that took place, it just shows that she needs to be gone. And so, Donald Trump used to talk about, in his reality TV days, et cetera, you're fired. So either he says you're fired, or we should continue to move forward with a motion to impeach her because she clearly is not the right person for that job.
Well, you've been around Washington for a minute, Congressman. What did you make of the fact that the president didn't call on her just now? It was an hour and 20-minute long cabinet meeting, no questions, and of all the cabinet officials he asked to speak, she was not one of them. Does that tell us anything about her standing?
Well, I think that it does. It also tells us, though, that the president is not being transparent either. We need to have transparency from the president of the United States of America. Some of this that's taking place, doesn't have clean hands in this. When you look at how and what he has said about people in Minnesota, why he sent 3,000-4,000 troops there to call this surge, in the language that he uses in regards to many of the citizens there, how he's attacked its governor and its mayor, he is the one that set the stage for what took place. And to my mind's eye, is similar to how he set the stage to what took place on January the 6th. They're one and the same. So her standing should be, in jeopardy. But we've seen, unfortunately, this White House, those that have attacked law enforcement officers, in January 6th, he's pardoned them. And in this case, those who are killing innocent American citizens, and how, even if you look at how they are going after, for example, 5-year-old Lamb Ramos, that's not what the American people want. That's not what we stand for. We want to make sure if you going after criminals, those who've been convicted of felons, we want them gone. That's what the people wanted, and I want, to be quite frank. I think that's, and there's no partisanship therein. But to do what he has done, set the stage that he has, and then try to hide behind it is not what we need from a president of the United States. But we do need him to stand up. If he really means something, want to really show something, fire Kristi Noem. Fire her now.
Wow, Congressman. There are a couple things I want to get to you with our remaining time here as ranking member on House Foreign Affairs. What are you hearing? What do you want to see happen with Iran? The president, as he says, has put a massive flotilla, another massive armada he's characterized larger than what was put off the coast of Venezuela. Are we about to strike Iran again?
Look, if the president feels that there's an imminent threat to the people of the United States, and or there's a real need to have a military strike on Iran, he should come to Congress first, give us that information so that we can make authorization on the utilization of military force and or a War Powers Act. So if, in fact, that's the case. And as well as, I think it is tremendously important to make sure that we're talking to all of our allies in the region, because they are ones that are in direct danger of any other kind of activity that Iran may do in retaliation. So I would also make sure that we're in close dialogue and conversation, and I would want to hear that with the Saudi Arabians, with Israel, with the Jordanians, that they all are affected by that. And making sure also that we're not undermining the people that we want to help, because very clearly we stand with those brave Iranians who are fighting for freedom within their own country. This did not happen because of the United States or the United States urging. This happened by an organic group of Iranians who are proud and strong and tired of their authoritarian type government that's been ripping off the people for a long period of time. And so what did this mean to them, and how that apparates, all that has to be looked at and considered before there's a strike.
Well, that's a lot to consider. And if it takes place in the coming days, Congressman, we'd like to talk with you about it. Let's go local before you leave us. You've got a new mayor in New York City, and he's calling for higher taxes on the rich to address what he describes as a fiscal crisis for his city. Do you support that effort?
No, look, what I support is let's try to figure out how do we make things more affordable. There's got to be ways in which we're talking about this. I think that there's some areas of where individuals will be ready to step up and do their fair share. So I'm not talking about broad taxes that would be placed on everyone or certain individuals. The governor of New York has clearly stated that she does not want to raise taxes. I understand that. We don't want to run people out of the city of New York. That's not what this is about. We would need some of the resources that the federal government had been sending to New York, that the president of the United States started to say punish New York and not have delivered those resources. So there's a number of ways I think that we can cut into that deficit and not have to raise taxes.
Okay, well, so 2%, another 2% on people making more than $1 million a year is a non-starter?
Yeah, I think that right now I'm with the governor, who says that we're not going to raise taxes. We're not going to chase people out of the city of New York. We're going to figure out how we can work together to collectively make things more affordable. And the first way to do that is the president to stop these tariffs that he is continuing to implement around the world that's driving these prices up.
Yeah, I'm going to mention an important stop on the road today on Bloomberg TV and radio. We're going to be hearing from Mayor Mamdani in the late edition of Balance of Power, 5 p.m. Wall Street time. His sit-down conversation with Bloomberg's Miles Miller will loom large in our coverage this evening, and I hope that you will be here for us when that takes place later on. Fed independence is also on the menu in Washington right now? Congressman Meeks, the president just said in the cabinet meeting that he will announce his pick for a Fed chair next week. What are you anticipating?
Well, look, this president seems to be wants to be a king. He wants to be able to control the Fed and not have it as an independent board to make its decisions based upon the economy and what it believes is the appropriate way to move. So I would hope. I mean, the president is free to choose whoever he wants to be on the board, but the kinds of acts. I would hope that we don't have someone who just wants to rubber stamp whatever the president says and does for political purposes. One of the things that has been most important by the Fed is their independence, so that they can make a decision based upon the economic totality of which they have to deal with. And so that is what sustained us and why others would have invested in the United States, because of that kind of sustainability and independence. And I would hope that the president will continue, or the Fed will continue in that manner.